Welcome back once again. It's time for another episode of the second longest running episodic Let's Play series. This is WCW 2000. And as you can see, we are ready for the next episode of Nitro as we are 2 weeks away from Spring Stampede live on pay-per-view, when Hulk Hogan will step into the ring against NWO 2000 member Scott Steiner for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. But as you can see tonight, some other matches are coming together for the pay-per-view as the build continues on the road to stability. Let's jump into this week's episode. Before we actually get going with this week's episode, I just wanted to mention that the point of this series with WCW is not necessarily to bring WCW into a new era. It is not necessarily to change WCW and have the company move to a new generation of talent. It's to infuse talent like Goldberg and Scott Steiner and Booker T into the upper echelon of the company with names like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and maybe even Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. You know, not to replace them, but to infuse them together. And I feel like that'll make the company more stable, because that would allow talent like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair to step down and step aside and maybe even retire, because having guys that could carry the load for them would help them. And that's the thing, I'm trying to get this company stabilized rather than moving into the next era for the company. But either way, a good way to start off the show with the Hulkster talking about his feud with Bret Hart and his match in 2 weeks against the big bad booty daddy, Scott Steiner. And that brings out Scott Steiner, who cuts a promo, who goes back and forth with Hulk Hogan about the world title match in 2 weeks' time on pay-per-view. And the first match tonight is Conan up against Low Ki, and Conan gets the victory over the young upstart from Brooklyn, New York. As we move to the next match. And we move to the next match. It is backstage with Harlem Heat backstage talking to the commissioner of WCW, Roddy Piper. And Roddy's talking about what the future holds for both members of Harlem Heat, and that includes Stevie Ray's match, which is next. And Stevie Ray goes up against local talent Kevin Fertig, and yes, Kevin Fertig is the same is the same person that worked for years down in developmental for WWE before coming up as both Mordecai and Kevin Thorne. The more you know. But either way, Savio Vega, Stevie Ray wins a jobber match tonight on Nitro. And now, after the commercial break, we move into the ring with Sid Vicious talking about how he holds a victory now over the United States champion, Eddie Guerrero. And this brings out Eddie, who talks about the fact that the only reason why Sid beat him last week is because of interference from Mike Awesome. But if Sid wants another shot at the United States title, all he has to do is ask. Because Eddie will be a fighting champion. And this brings out Commissioner Piper, and Roddy makes the match for next week. Eddie Guerrero versus Sid Vicious in a rematch from last week for the WCW United States Championship. And now we move on as the Filthy Animals go up against Lane and Lodi, and Kidman and Ray get back on the winning track after having a rough couple of weeks, including losses to Chronic on 2 separate occasions. And now they're with Mean Gene, and Kidman and Ray talk about how Spring Stampede will be their final shot against Chronic and their final opportunity to regain the WCW World Tag Team titles. And Kidman's ready for the task. And now we move to the next match. Speaking of somebody who needs to recoup from some momentum, the chosen one, Jeff Jarrett, needs to recoup some momentum as he's fallen on some hard times since losing that feud to Ric Flair a few weeks ago, and has really been, I don't want to say falling down the card, but let's just say in real life, Jeff Jarrett would be world champion at this point. But I'm booking WCW 2000 a little bit different than the real WCW did, because I'm actually trying to make credible champions and real and meaningful champions by giving the guys credible runs with the belt rather than disastrous runs where the title ends up getting vacant. Or if you look at Eddie Guerrero with the United States title, he's held it since January, as has Scott Steiner, and Steiner's risen up the card since winning the title. Okay, fine, the Filthy Animals, and okay, fine, the Cruiserweight division, but also I want to point out, what about Bam Bam Bigelow as Hardcore Champion? Either way, a rough match, but the point of the match was to get DDP out there so we can talk up his feud with the American Nightmare and their match at Spring Stampede. And then we move to the next match with Steve Williams going up against David Flair, and Steve Williams gets back on the winning track this week, as it seems like this week was just designed to get people back on the momentum track, and that is what I exactly did with Dr. Death, who defeated David Flair this week to get back in the win column. And now we move back to the ring for an in-ring segment as the Total Package calls out Sting, and a Sting impersonator comes out, and they make fun of the real Sting, and by the end of the segment we realize Sting is not at the arena tonight. Or they make it clear, the announcers, that Sting isn't here tonight, and the only reason why the Package is so confident is because he knows Sting is not in the arena. And I mentioned Mike Awesome earlier tonight, as Mike Awesome goes up against Marty Jannetty. And you ask, why Marty Jannetty? Well, I'll tell you this. I wanted Mike Awesome to be able to come in and squash his first opponent, and I felt like him squashing a name rather than a local talent that nobody knows would mean more for his first match and be able to speed up what I'm doing with Mike, as I'm hoping to give him a big push as long as everything works out, which, a 59 in-ring performance isn't good, but for your debut at a major company, it isn't bad. And unfortunately, due to circumstances that I saw in the previous segment, Mike Awesome won't work with Jimmy Hart, so Jimmy Hart has to sell Mike Awesome's contract because they have absolutely no chemistry, which is weird, because you would have thought that if they had no chemistry, it would have popped up here. It would have popped up here too. But either way, we move to the final segment. It is Ric Flair versus Buff Bagwell, and the Nature Boy gets the victory in the main event against the Buff one. Unfortunately, due to the differentiation in in-ring performances, the main event kind of fell flat. So let's just see how good we did. unfortunately, we can't do really good every week. So, but either way, we increased our popularity in 23 regions and only lost popularity in 1. So in my opinion, that means we increased popularity in 22 regions. So that's still pretty good for a final rating of a 74. And I know at this point it seems like things may be winding down here in the WCW, but as of right now, the book is not closing anytime soon, so you still have more time to enjoy what could become the longest running Let's Play series on this channel. So let me know down in the comment section below if you're enjoying this series, if you like how I'm booking WCW, let me know down below. But if you don't want to leave a comment, you can always leave a like. And subscribe to the channel for more content just like this that you can only find right here at Wrestling Express. Till next time. Later.